Hello, and we're back to putting the leather cover on the wood core. I have to apologize, I didn't record earlier. I had so many projects going on, I got tied up in this before I realized that I should be recording my work. But here's where we're at. I've described what I do before. So initially what I did was glue risers onto the wood core, because there's one belt going to be here and one belt here. So here you see the risers. I'm going to use a 1-inch belt. So taking into account the thickness of the leather, I glued the risers almost 1.5 inches apart, because I knew that when you apply the leather you lose a little bit of space. Here's the front. You can see here that the actual space for the belt is exactly 1 inch. So as I said in a previous video, how to put the leather wrap on, what I did next after I glued the risers in place is I applied glue to the leather and the front of the wood core. I lined up the leather on the wood core and just glued the front. Then I took a burnishing tool and I accentuated the risers to get them to stand out more. This is really thick leather. You know, normally I would use, if you're not going to do any tooling, I would use like 2 to 3 ounce leather for the leather wrap. If you're going to do a little bit of tooling, maybe 3 to 4 ounce. Because of this complicated stamping pattern, I used 5 to 6 ounce, and that was really thick. So it was very difficult to get the risers to stand out. After I glued the front, because this leather is so thick and stiff, what I did then was I wet the inside of the leather and applied glue to the wood core and the wet leather, and then formed the leather around the sides of the wood core. As it was drying, I again took the burnishing tool and worked around the sides. I made sure that the leather wrap was firmly adherent to the wood core all the way down. And so now this is dry. And as you can see here, I've left a space. Oh, and actually what I did too was I cut this leather down roughly along the center line. The next step we're going to do is we're going to fine tune this cut so that the two edges meet. I'm going to do the leather wrap so the two edges butt, and then I'm going to sew down here. For precise cutting, I use the lowly X-Acto knife. And these blades will cut through leather like hot knife through butter. And I buy the blades by the hundreds, and as soon as that knife stops being razor sharp, I just change it out and put a new blade on. So this is a new blade, and we're going to go ahead and trim this seam in the back right along the midline of the leather. So let me put my loops on and we'll get started. You see here the midline that I've drawn, so I'm just going to go down right along the midline and trim this. Yeah, this is scary, but this is what you do. I've got the midline cut so that the edge is made up. And next step is to take some of your leftover dye from earlier, and I'm going to touch up this fresh edge so that when the scabbard is sewn together you don't see that white leather seam. Then we'll let this dry thoroughly. And the next step is to punch holes for stitching. Next we're going to punch stitching holes along the edge. I use a stitching chisel, keeps everything spaced nice, and I'm just going to start at the top and punch all the way down both sides, and then I'm going to use some white thread. You can see a color pattern here, white and blue, so I'm going to use white thread to sew the back of this up. I started stitching from the throat of the scabbard towards the tip. A lot of people say they like to start at the tip and work up to the throat, but that's counterintuitive to me because this is the most aesthetically important part of the stitching to get everything lined up. So this is where I start. And then I don't care what the tip looks like. If the tip's a little off or something's funny down there, I don't care. It's going to get covered up with a chape. So I always start at the throat of the scabbard and work my way down. I draw, for the string, I draw 4 times the length of the scabbard and use 2 needles and just kind of work my way down. We're coming along. Well, that's a wrap. That's a joke. So the leather wrap is finished. It's been sewn on. Here we go. It's got the piping around the mouth. It's all sewn up. It has the risers here and here. The next step is we're going to put the belts on. We got to make the belts. So this is an offset. This is going to have an offset sword belt. So there'll be one belt, long belt coming off here. There'll be another belt wrapped around through the lace through the cover here, and a buckle out here. I obtained a belt buckle and strap end from Armor and Castings in the Ukraine, and I also bought some belt mounts that we're going to put on the belt. So basically what we're going to do, I think I'm going to start with a mock-up for the lacing pattern here. I'm going to cut vertical slits and lace the belt. It'll actually come from this way. Lace the belt through here. I want to make sure that I get the spacing of the slits correct so it looks good. And we've got to put the big long belt around here and put the strap end on the other end. And the buckle will go on the belt that comes off of this side, the upper part. So let's get started on the belt.